And hello again. Welcome to the Mark Osler Retirement Experience. My name is Randy Cook. I'm here each week with Mark Osler as we talk through some of the issues of retirement. We talk about what's going on economically, what's going on Wall Street. But what really is important is what's going on Main Street. What's going on with you? You've got these worries about, did I save enough money? Is my money in the right place? Who am I going to get to help me through all of this? What am I going to do about taxes and Medicare? And there's so much to think about, and there's so much to deal with, and that is why we have this show. Mark, how are you doing today?
Fantastic, Randy, and we're going to have a great show today, aren't we?
I think so. We got some economic data to go through, and then we're going to kind of relate it to what we should be thinking about when it comes to that. And most recently, we just had another inflation number come out, and I think everybody was expecting that these tariffs would cause inflation, and they're still saying that, but the numbers aren't bearing that out yet. We had a number that was pretty flat, 2.7, and then the CPI went up just slightly to 3.1, so it's hanging in there, and the market seems to like everything. I mean, steady as she goes, I guess, Mark.
Absolutely. So let's just think about these numbers. Look at these numbers. May year over year was 2.4. We're thinking, okay, it's going to level out. Well, then June comes out and it shoots up year over year to 2.7. Mm-hmm. So we're thinking, okay, it hasn't leveled out yet. But now here comes July, year over year, 2.7. Looks like that's that magic figure that maybe it's going to level out unless we see some tariff talk that affects the market a little bit more, right? But we need to pay attention to these figures because it matters with regards to interest rates.
And the next reading is going to be in September, and they're going to be kind of back-to-back. When the number comes out and when the Fed meets, there's a lot of pressure on Jerome Powell to lower interest rates. They're probably waiting for the next reading, I would think, don't you think?
Right. We were just talking about that. September 11th, we should know that data, and then by September 16th, we're going to know whether they're going to lower interest rates or not. And I want people to remember that because, hey, before September 16th, we probably should have a conversation about interest rates, and do you want to get a good interest rate out there? Because we can do that for you now. I don't know if that's going to change by then.
So as we say, interest rates, when it comes to the people who listen to this show, I mean, we are talking to people getting ready for retirement, people in retirement, and for people who are going to buy a house, a higher interest rate's not a good thing. If you're going to buy a car, a higher interest rate's not a good thing. But if you're going into retirement and you're looking for something that's outside the market that doesn't have that up and down risk of the market, higher interest rates are a pretty good thing, and all we're talking about right now is lowering interest rates. So, I mean, that's a message to us if we're getting ready and doing our planning, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I want to just focus on here is, fixed index annuities and multi-year guarantee annuities. This is important to understand because it's the time that you get into these contracts. So let me just break this down for you. When we talk about getting into an annuity contract, one of the things that can affect a surrender charge or surrender value on an annuity contract is what's called a market value adjustment. Now, just identifying a market value adjustment also has an effect on whether interest rates are high or low. What do I mean? Well, let me explain. So if you get into an annuity contract, fixed index annuity, multi-year guarantee annuity, you get into it right now, then interest rates are high, right? Mm-hmm. When they lower interest rates, a market value adjustment will actually increase the surrender value of the contract over time.
Okay.
So it actually helps it. So it's actually good to get into annuity contracts when interest rates are higher. Another good example would be a multi-year guarantee annuity because there are a lot of multi-year guarantee annuities that are paying higher interest rates than CDs, and you can lock them in for a longer period of time, and you can get rid of the interest rate risk that you might be at risk for right now.
Well, a lot of people are really looking at annuities right now because of the fact that they provide income in retirement, and our interest rates are very favorable there. I'm looking at some numbers here, and since the beginning of the year, $223 billion in annuities have been sold. Second quarter was a record, and they think by the end of the year, $400 billion will be sold, and that'll probably be another record. So, I mean, I know that sometimes you say the word annuity, and somebody's eyebrows will go up and say, I've heard bad things. And what we want to make sure that people know is this is an option for income in retirement. You want to know how you're going to replace your paycheck. You want to know how the money's coming in retirement. This is an option to look at.
Absolutely. And it should be. So you don't want to take your liquid money and put it into an annuity. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean money that you think you might need as an emergency, or money you think you might spend, or money you might want to hold on the sideline for real estate or property or anything like that. You could do brokerage accounts with that kind of money, depending on your risk tolerance, because obviously that's still liquid. But with annuities, you have certain provisions in annuity contracts. A lot of annuity contracts say, from day one, you can't take anything, or you could take 5%. Some annuity contracts say after 1 year, you could take 5, 7, or 10%. And every once in a while, you see an annuity contract that has provisions where you have a stacking withdrawal, free withdrawal of 20% or 30%. And that's just how they stack over the years. But in general, they're illiquid. So when I look at an annuity, can you take income from it? Of course you can. You could do a fixed index annuity or a multi-year guarantee annuity. Just take the interest or take withdrawals, simple withdrawals, and be comfortable with that as well. It's just about building it into the plan. The question is, are you trying to take more than 5% of your money every year? Mm-hmm. Well, let's have a conversation, because also you could be at risk for what if the money runs out.
It comes down to, what's going on out there right now. Interest rates do affect certain financial products, and annuities are one of them. And this is a way to get income in retirement. So why don't you give us a call and let's talk through it. You go to our website, which is moretoretire.com. Very simple, moretoretire.com. At the bottom of the page is a place for you to put some information in there. And then Mark of the team will reach out to you and say, hey, okay, what's going on? How can we help? Let's start the conversation. What are you concerned about? You can also call 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984 with a no-cost, no-obligation look at what's going on with you right now. What are your questions? Let's get them out on the table. So one of the things that everybody else is worried about is that sooner or later, this big market bull thing that's going on right now will come to an end. There's still that recession fear out there right now. So some people are going into a protective mode. And, I know that when I bring up Warren Buffett, people go, yeah, I'm not Warren Buffett. I get it. But sometimes we don't look at the numbers, look at the concept. And what Warren Buffett has been doing over the last year or year and a half is moving money away from risk, moving money out of the stock market and moving it over to cash and cash equivalents. He has $344 billion in that area right now. That's a pretty big piece of the pie. So, Mark, I know we're not Warren Buffett, but can we look at what Warren Buffett is doing and say, maybe I should be doing a little bit of that?
Yes. So it's as simple as that, Randy. I mean, truly, folks are, he's getting liquid because he has some ideas for what he might want to do, and he's getting a little bit more conservative. Mm-hmm. We've seen this market, top out time and time again, since 2009. We haven't had an actual real correction since 2009. And so we're looking at the data and we're saying, 2022. But not really. I mean, we look back and S&P was about a negative 18. NASDAQ was about a negative 33, but it still wasn't enough to call it a full correction. It recovered too fast. Mm-hmm. So that's what I think he's thinking about. I'm not asking him that question directly. I don't have his phone number or anything, but hey, I he's a smart guy and we should pay attention to this. I do believe in brokerage. We do brokerage here at Mark Osler Retirement Experience. We do that. We work with you. We have some incredible planning tools. We have some proprietary things that we do with Market Guard. And I would love to talk to you about that too, because that can be liquid money as well. And there are also conservative things you can do within that portfolio that might not be full on preservation tactics, but there are a few like structured notes that you could talk to me about, and they're alternative investments. And these are conversations that we can have. So, just discussing that, but getting more conservative. Yeah, annuities are conservative. And if you're not trying to spend that money, it's a great way to have something with a preservation tactic to it. And let's just say you needed it for income. That's another conversation we can have.
Well, you and I have talked in the past about the whole idea of the allocation of your money. And, 60-40 is something that people will use. 60% stocks, 40% in the area that is outside the market, bonds or whatever it is. Maybe it's 50-50. Maybe it's 30-70. Maybe it's 70-30. Is that where this conversation is? I mean, Warren Buffett is saying, I'm moving more of the pie over to this area out of the market. That's a conversation that we kind of got to figure out who you are and how you like your money to be allocated, because some people don't like that roller coaster of the stock market.
That's right. And if you came to me, the first thing that we do is we run a report. So let's say, for example, you want me to review your brokerage account statement. You could go to my website, moreToRetire.com. I have a secure upload button. You could just put your PDF right in there, and then you can go to the bottom of my page and you can fill out some information and say, hey, Mark, let you know I sent you my brokerage account. I'll say, oh, I see it there. Okay, let's set up a time where we can just do this review and run this report and get some answers for you about your information. Maybe you have a 70-30 portfolio, meaning 70% equity, 30% fixed. Then we identify certain factors about it within the report. We understand that we want to understand your level of risk and what level of risk you're taking versus what you really truly are with regards to your risk and what you can handle with your risk tolerance. Then we try to understand how things move in the same direction, and do we want everything move in the same direction? And the answer is no. So these are a lot of the conversations we have, and we discuss these things. So again, from a layperson's point of view, we will dial it back and make it simple to understand. But if all your money's in brokerage, when we're referencing 70-30, we're only referencing stuff that's still all in the market. Mm-hmm. And I think the conversation should be more like the rule of 100. 100 minus if you're 60 years old, you take 100 minus 60, and it tells you that on general rule of thumb, if you're just an average, investor person, doesn't know a whole lot about it, but just invests because they want a nice return, but maybe they're trying to build for retirement, then that just means you should actually be 40-60, 40% in the market, 60% in more conservative types of assets. So let's just say, for example, money market, CDs, annuities, things like that. That's what it's referencing actually. But you say you're 40-60, but you're all in the market. That's a different ballgame. But we can have all of these conversations, but we run a report. That's the first thing we do to identify certain things.
I was just thinking of that movie, Jerry Maguire, when Tom Cruise was running around saying, show me the money. And I think what you should do is you should give Mark a call and say, show me the math. Show me the math on my retirement, because that's what we want to know is, am I going to be okay? And let's get you the answer to, am I going to be okay? Give us a call. Give us a look on the website, moreToRetire.com. moreToRetire.com. There's a place down in the bottom of the page where you can put some information in there. The team will reach out to you, or call 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984. Now, one of the big questions that people will have about retirement is, how much money do I need? First, they want to know how much I should have saved. And there's those big numbers out there, and that number seems to be going up all the time. But what we probably should be more concerned about is, how much can I spend per month? So the Bureau of Labor Statistics has some information about that. I think it's really hard data, and it's really interesting here. The average spend for a household in retirement. So we've got a married couple, age 65 to 74. The average spend is $5,400 a month. Okay? If you're over 75, it goes down to $4,400 a month. Now, the average Social Security checks coming into a household with two people is about $3,000 a month. So I looked at that, Mark, and I said, $3,000 to $5,400? That doesn't seem like a hard lift. And you may want a little bit more, but it's still, if you save $500,000 or $1 million for retirement, that just doesn't seem that hard. So why are people so scared and worried all the time? Talk to me about how people view this whole math equation, and when we get it all down on paper, they got to feel a little bit better.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's because they have those articles out there. Oh, you need $1.4 million to retire. Well, who the heck are you talking to? Mm-hmm. Are you talking to somebody in Southern California, or are you talking to somebody in Maine? Let's be real about this. And so let's just have this conversation. Now, we're in the Research Triangle Park area where, there's a lot of jobs here. We've started to notice the inflation in the real estate market to the point where things aren't as cheap as they used to be, especially with costs out at grocery stores and things like that. Wake County, where we're at, things can be a little bit more expensive than the national average. So we take all these things into account. Now, I don't want to fully rely on Social Security because, as we know, unless they correct the trust fund, it looks like it could be exhausted by 2032. And if that happened, it could affect everybody's Social Security by at least 20%. So I always take that into account as well. And then we try to identify certain things and say, hey, let's see how much money you have. Let's see how much income you need. And let's identify everything because we want to know all of your expenses and then what you want to spend money on in retirement, trips, things like that, gifts for people. Do you want to be generous? Do you tithe to your church? All these things matter. So we have these conversations, we discuss these things, and we identify how we can help you get to that goal, right? We want to make sure that you feel like you say, I'm good.
What's your income number? What do you need per month? You probably know that right now. But do you know what it is in retirement? It's hard to figure that out. You're looking at 10, 20, 30 years into the future. That takes a little bit of math, and that's the kind of thing that we'll sit down and do as we go through the process. Give Mark a call. Give us a look on the website, moretoretire.com. Start right there. At the bottom of the page, a place for you to put some information in there. Reach out to you, ask the questions. What's going on? What are you concerned about? How can we help? 984-300-1984 is the number. 984-300-1984. Give Mark a call. All right, we talk about doing a 401k or an IRA conversion, meaning you're going to start taking money from the taxable bucket, paying the taxes, and then moving it over to a Roth so that when you use that money, you don't have to pay taxes like you're paying a toll to get your own money. Well, the Wall Street Journal did a story about that, and they said, if you do a conversion, that can keep you in a lower tax bracket. And if you're in a lower tax bracket, it means your money could last longer in retirement. And according to this article, up to 7 years. Wow. That is significant. Have you seen that kind of a benefit? And just let's go through the benefits of doing that conversion, Mark.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this is something that has come up with several people, and I do have a client currently doing those types of conversions because he felt like that was going to work out for him in the future with regards to his income. And yeah, it's really simple. If you have an IRA, at some point in the future, you have to take required minimum distributions. That's what the IRS requires us to take. Now, if you're 60 years old, you've got plenty of time to look at that and not be as worried, with regards to having to take that RMD in the future if you start doing some conversions. Mm-hmm. So if you start doing those conversions, then hey, I've got X amount of years to do this. So let's just say, for example, you were born 1960 or after. If you're born 1960 or after, you don't have to take a required minimum distribution until you're age 75. Mm-hmm. So what does that tell us, Randy? That tells us that everybody sit in this room, if you're born 1960 mm-hmm. and here we are 2025, that means you're 65 years old. That means you've got 10 more years where you can do some conversions and we can figure out, do the math, see what that might do to your taxes, talk to your CPA or your accountant, and make sure that we're doing what's best for you. You always got to involve the professionals and make sure that we are attentive to your matter and make sure that it makes sense for you. But essentially, if you do that, by the time you get to 75, if you converted everything, yeah, you're definitely going to be in a lower tax bracket for sure.
So it helps you in that manner of speaking when you get to those RMDs, because if you've converted all that money over from your IRA or your 401k, and then Uncle Sam comes knocking at the door saying, I want my cut, you can say, you already got your cut. We already did that. So you don't have to worry about that. And that means if you want to buy a car at age 76 or 78, you can take out that $40,000 or $35,000 and you don't have to take $50,000 out to get your 35, which seems like a good position to be in.
Yeah, and pretty cool about this too. So every time you do a conversion, you have to wait 5 years before the gains become income tax free. Okay. So let's just say, for example, you started doing conversions age 65 to 75. You were done by 74. Here we are, age 75. You're like, you know what? I want to take some withdrawals out that are tax free. Well, the last 5 years, I have to wait each and every year to make sure that stacks in, but that's only on the growth. So, as long as you tax-wise are taking it from the conversion portion of it, by tax law, you can do that, based on what accountants tell us, So what we understand is you don't have to worry. You can take the principal portion, and that's always available. With a Roth IRA, your principal is always available back as something, because obviously you're putting it towards a tax advantage strategy.
This is a conversation you probably should have, because so many of us, the bulk of our retirement money is in a 401k. I mean, that's where it is. That's where they told us to put it, because the pensions kind of went away and they gave us this thing called a 401k. So that's where we packed all our money. So most people who come in now for retirement planning say, here's the bulk of my money. Well, it's a big old tax infested bucket, and it should be something that you talk through. Now, Mark, the other part of this, not only does it help you in your 70s and 80s, but if you leave this world, then it can help your kids as well, because if you give them all that money that's taxable, they're not going to get all of it. But if it's already been detaxed and converted, what they see is what they get.
Absolutely. So Roth IRA, your kids, they're going to be like, oh, I got this death benefit from this Roth IRA. What do I got to deal with here? I'm going to say, well, looks to me like it's income tax free to you, almost like life insurance. It would produce the same way. Now, if you don't, you leave it as an IRA to your kids, they have to do an inherited IRA or just pay the taxes on it, or just maybe take distributions over a 5-year period of time. But an inherited IRA, you take the money over a 10-year period of time. You have to take at least required minimum distributions each year, but I would always advise to take more, because you have to exhaust it within 10 years of the death of the person. So there's several different factors here at play. So these are the conversations we need to have. And in addition to this, if you don't want it to be a big tax bomb, maybe you're already of RMD age and you're healthy. You could think about using your required minimum distribution to maybe buy some life insurance to offset the taxable situation, because then the life insurance will be income tax free and might help take care of the taxes. And then the kids might not feel like they have to do an inherited IRA that's attached to the government qualifications and all of that stuff. So let's have these conversations, maybe ease of use, and make it a little easier for you.
Well, many of us are going to come, as I say, to the retirement table with a lot of money in the 401k. And this is something we should be talking about, because it can cause a problem later in the future. MoreToRetire.com is the website. MoreToRetire.com. And at the bottom of the page is a place for you to put a little note in there, message that says, hey, Mark, I'd like to talk about this. I'd like to talk about my 401k. I'm confused about what to do about health care. My parents were in long-term care. That worries me. Put it in there, and then we'll know what you want to talk about. You could also call 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984. All right, so when I think of great comedians of my life, I think of George Carlin, the hippy-dippy weatherman, the 7 words you can't say on TV. But my favorite George Carlin routine was a place for my stuff.
That's the whole meaning of life, isn't it? Trying to find a place for your stuff. So all your house is, it's a place to keep your stuff while you go out and get more stuff. Now, sometimes you've got to move. You got to get a bigger house. Why? Too much stuff.
I love it. Too much stuff. But you know what, Mark? When people walk through your door, they bring all their stuff. They bring their financial stuff, and then they have all their material stuff too. And I want to talk about how we figure out where the stuff goes, because this is a part of the retirement conversation. Yeah, we're going to talk about investments and income and growth. We're going to talk about taxes. But you know what we also have to figure out is something that has to do with what we call estate planning. Where will my stuff go if I leave this world? Material and financial. So how does that conversation start? How does it unfold? How do you help?
Well, let's start with this. My second oldest daughter, she's going into her junior year at ECU. Okay. So just like my oldest daughter, she graduated from UNC Wilmington a couple years ago and everything. Let's just have a conversation about this. These apartment complexes that you have to put these kids in, they have this period of time where you have to get out one space, but then you can't get in the other space for another couple of weeks. And I'm thinking, okay, this is driving me crazy. You know why? Because they got to bring their stuff home and it's got to sit with us. And we have a storage space that's already full, which is ridiculous, okay?
And then you got to bring the stuff all back.
We got too much stuff. Yes. So we move her back in and get that stuff back in. And, but each and every summer it's like that. And I said, I can't wait until this is over. So me and my wife had a conversation. We're like, you know what? Even with our space, we're going to get rid of the stuff in our storage space.
Less stuff.
It's stuff, okay? It's just stuff.
I love it.
You collect all of these things over the years, and that's what you're going to bring to me. You're going to bring me a bunch of stuff, and then we're going to figure out what you should keep and what you shouldn't keep. We're going to put things in order for you, and we're only going to do what you ask us to do for you. When we do business in my office, I never ask you to do business. You come in. We go through several appointments. We take our time, and I'm going to be the same guy now as I am going to be in 5 or 10 years. I'm going to give you the same advice based on what you tell me and your answers to questions. I'm going to be very comfortable, confident, and have some good suggestions for you. You will do business with me when you feel comfortable and when it makes the most sense for you. And we're going to take that time. So estate planning, it's a big one. We love to use some attorneys that are right down the road from us to get them involved to do whether you need a living trust or will or whatever it might be. We want to get the estate planning, on lockdown for you, get it situated, right? And get those answers. Because if you go to your deathbed and you haven't done these things, it's probably going to make you die a little quicker, right? But let's be honest. When you've done all of these things, you can leave peacefully because you're not hooking this up with a trailer and taking it with you, right?
That's so true. There are so many different boxes that we have to check off when it comes to retirement planning. There's investments, there's taxes, there's healthcare, there's estate planning issues, and so much more. And many of us probably have done a little bit of it, but we don't have the whole thing done, the whole umbrella, the whole enchilada. And Mark has the resources where he can point you to and help with, and we would love to have that conversation with you. Look at our website, which is moretoretire.com. There's a place down at the bottom of the page where you can put just a little note in there and say, Mark, I'd like to talk about this. How am I going to deal with this? Social Security just scares me because they say it's going away. It's going bankrupt. Well, okay, let's talk through all of those particular instances and issues that you want to talk about. Moretoretire.com is the website. 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984. We're going to take a break. When we come back, the people at USA Today wrote an interesting article, and they say, before you retire, you have to ask yourself this question. We'll tell you what that is. Coming up next on the Mark Osler Retirement Experience.
A simple piece of paper. It's something we use every day. For the most part, it does what it's designed to do. It sits there flat on your desk as a placeholder for information. But with a couple strategic folds, suddenly your flat piece of paper becomes an airplane and flies across the room. Your 401k is kind of like that flat piece of paper. It just sits there as a placeholder for your money. Mark Osler can show you those strategic moves to take your 401k from just sitting there to creating the income you need for retirement. Call today for a free no-obligation meeting. 984-300-1984. That's 984-300-1984. Or online at moretoretire.com.
Welcome back to the Mark Osler Retirement Experience. Online, moretoretire.com. If you're coming up on this, you see your friends starting to retire, and you know it's coming somewhere down the line. Let's get you some help. Here's our number, 984-300-1984, 984-300-1984, or moretoretire.com. The people at USA Today says there are a few questions you should ask yourself before you retire. And the very first one is, what does a day in retirement look like to you? And I started thinking about that. I go, I have no idea. I hope it's not full of TV and me sitting in a chair all day. But in any way, Mark, when people come to you, they want to get their finances in order. They want to get their retirement in order. But at the same time, making the transition into retirement sometimes for some people is real easy, but for some people it gets a little hard. How do you see people make that stride into retirement? Do they find it right away, or for some people does it take a while?
It varies quite a bit. I mean, I have some clients that they struggle from month to month feeling like, oh my gosh, do I need to be working? Do I need to be working? Mm-hmm. I can give you that ease of use to understand whether you need to keep working or not. I mean, that's a conversation we can have. I have people that are just, we've saved this money, we've got this income, we're happy, we're doing this, that, and the other, we're traveling, we're just enjoying it. And then I've had it where I have a couple that's doing it, a client of mine, and yet the husband is just loving it, and the wife is still like, but we're still spending this money. So again, the variance is just incredible, but it becomes comical. We have these conversations, we laugh, we enjoy each other's company, and it's a really great time to say, you know what, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some people are kind of like at a starting block, ready to run a race. I can't wait to retire. I got to get out of this work. I got to get out of this job. But then for many people, their job is a real huge part of their identity. And it's who I am. What am I going to do if I don't go to work every day and go 8 to 5 and people are asking me questions all day and I feel real valuable? And to go from that to sitting in a chair and watching The Price is Right, it's not real fulfilling. So there's got to be plans not only for your money, but there's got to be plans for your time. And boy, you got to kind of also almost be a counselor sometimes when people walk through your door, don't you?
Sure. As a matter of fact, growing up, on my sick days, I always watched The Price is Right. Okay? That was fantastic. I get sick. Oh, I'm watching The Price is Right.
There you go. Playing the games.
That was happening. But yeah, a little bit like a counselor. Yes, for sure. I mean, because we're breaking down all these different things. We have a whole financial pathway to more. If you go to my website, moretoretire.com, we have a whole 5-step process. We start with a treetop view. Mm-hmm. We go to step 2, which is discovering your retirement desires. Step 3 is personalizing your retirement plan. Step 4 is where we make adjustments and changes over time. And step 5 is just ongoing support. This is how we do things. And so you can go to our process guide. It's under the tab process on moretoretire.com. It helps you understand how we go about things. And what we want to do is start from the top. We want to review your brokerage accounts, your 401ks. We want to review your annuities, your life insurance. Yes, life insurance is one of the first things I've ever done, because sometimes we have to run an in-force illustration to understand if you got something healthy or not. So we do all of these things, and we talk about your estate planning too, because we want to involve the attorneys, make sure we get the documents in place that you need. If I need to talk to your accountant or CPA about certain things, if we need to do some conversions, these are all the conversations we have. If you're only working off a fixed amount of money, you might need to think about looking at an annuity with a lifetime income rider, because maybe that's going to produce enough income as part of the plan for your retirement. This is a discussion we can have. And then also, hey, what do we want to have in brokerage versus what do we want to have in conservative assets like CDs, money market, or annuities? And these are all the conversations we have, but we break down, making sure you have enough income to cover your expenses and cover your wants and needs in life as well.
Yep. We want to have the money to go along with the dreams. And I think it's so important to come into your office with some pretty big dreams, because you say, you like to cruise? Okay, you've been to the Caribbean? What about the Mediterranean? You like to golf? What about St. Andrews and Pebble Beach? Think big. Let's put the money with it. That's the fun of doing what Mark does, and the fun for you to sit down. It's not all X's and O's and numbers and, standard deviation. Yeah. We're going to talk about some of that stuff, but think big. Let's have some dreams about retirement. Let's have the conversation. Let's start now. Moretoretire.com. is the website. Moretoretire.com. There's a place down at the bottom where you can write in a little information there about yourself and what you're looking for, some contact information, or call 984-300-1984. And let's get going. 984-300-1984. So I heard somebody say one time that's let's make your retirement exciting and your investments boring. And I thought, what a great bumper sticker. And then I find this article. This is in bankrate.com, and it says there's a lot of people that have a fear of the stock market crashing. So it's time to embrace, and they put this in big bold letters, embrace the boring. There is nothing wrong with 4 to 5% returns. How many of your clients think that boring is better? I got to believe that there's some people that walk through your door that say, I got to beat the market, or I want to match the market. Or do many people realize that they might be able to get by on 4 to 5% and be totally comfortable with that?
I mean, that's really my suggestion to people is if you're going to take withdrawals in retirement, if we didn't build some kind of income stream that has some type of lifetime income rider or anything like that, then we should have a discussion about how much you should take in terms of withdrawals. And yeah, I don't think you should take more than 4 or 5% anyway. Mm-hmm. So if you could build that into the portfolio and say, hey, we can average over here, 5%. And then over here, we can have some brokerage money and probably over 10, 20 years, we'll average a lot more than that. But again, at least that's the money we don't have to worry about as much, right? So that's all the conversations we have. So if you want to talk to me about multi-year guarantee annuities, now is the time to do it before the Fed decides to cut the rate again, honestly, because if you want to lock yourself in and let's just say it's a preservation tactic. Because if you think about a multi-year guarantee annuity, they go 3, 5, 8, 10 years out. It protects you from interest rate risk. And these are the conversations we should have because a lot of them do have higher rates than CDs right now. And again, they'll lower when interest rates lower. And I'd like to see you lock in things and just embrace the boring. Now, look, I'm not a bean counter, but I can tell you it's okay to be a little boring in your portfolio.
Well, you've mentioned in the past about Market Guard, which is a series of different portfolios with varying risk levels that people can choose from as they come into your office. And if you want to be a riverboat gambler, okay, fine. There's a portfolio for you. But most of us, I think, probably want to be a little bit more conservative as we go into our retirement. And that's where I think, Mark is one of the very few, or there's a limited amount of advisors across the country that have access to Market Guard. I think it's something really to kind of investigate and see what Mark has when it comes to those kind of portfolios. I kind of like the idea of almost like a menu at a restaurant and saying, I kind of like that one right there. And I think I kind of like the idea.
Yeah, because you know what, Randy, I mean, one of the things that I like to talk about is how folks most of the time are in a position where when you look at our expense ratios, they tend to be lower when we're using Market Guard than a lot of other places. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it happens quite a bit. And that's just simply comes from running a report and identifying what your current expense ratios are right now, because that's important to understand all the expenses that you don't see off the top. They come from behind the scenes. And then when we discuss things about your portfolio, we got ETF models, 80, 20, 60, 40. We've got a pure equity model that the beta is lower than the S&P 500, yet it's a similar standard deviation, meaning that you could basically take a very similar type of risk to the S&P 500, but based on the fact that it's spread around so much, it has a lower risk of a beta of a 0.86 versus the S&P being a 1.0. And so these are the questions, conversations we have, discussions we have, because we want to make sure, are you allocating the right way? And then, hey, how much do we want in the market? And then how much do we want over here in, an annuity with an income rider, a fixed index annuity? And then we'll take on with regards to multi-year guarantee annuities where we can lock in against interest rate risk. And so these are the conversations we can have. And then how much money do you want to sit in the money market? How much money do you want to sit over in a CD in the bank? And then in addition to that, when you do brokerage with us, we can put some of that money into a money market account that kind of sits there and has a decent return for you as well.
Mark and I have discussed that, when you get a little bit older, you don't like roller coasters anymore. Your kids want you to ride on them. You go, yeah. You're tall enough. Go. Because I don't want that anymore in my life. I don't want that in my investments either. I don't like that whole roller coaster idea. And maybe you don't either. You don't want to see your money flying back and forth like a reed in the wind. You kind of like that steady as she goes kind of feeling. Well, there's probably a portfolio out there that we can find for you, that we can develop for you that would fit that mold. Let's have that conversation and see how much you want to go up and down in the market, how much you want outside the market. That is part of what we do with Mark and sitting down and having the conversation. MoreToRetire.com. Check our website out. Learn more about Mark. You'll see his process right there. MoreToRetire.com. Give us a call, 984-300-1984. Get an appointment with Mark. Let's sit down and talk through your concerns about retirement and see if we can get you some answers. 984-300-1984. According to some new research here at Schroders, 62% of Americans have no idea how long their money will last in retirement. That's a big number, and that's an important number. People who were in this survey said their biggest concerns are inflation, the cost of health care, living into their 90s, and uncertain stock markets. And it's pretty much the same as it's always been, Mark. It's the same stuff over and over again, isn't it? So we want to know how long our money will last. I mean, some people want their money to, go to their kids. Other people want to spend their last dollar at the funeral home. It's different for everybody, isn't it?
It is. And to be honest with you, there are people that come to me and say, hey, I want to leave a legacy. So that's part of estate planning. And so we discuss these things and try to understand, I want to spend everything. Okay, well, we'll figure out a way where you can spend everything. That's fine too. And maybe you don't want to break down into your principal. You just want to live off of, growth or whatever type of income we've made last. I know that there are certain situations where a person might say, well, if I put money into a fixed index annuity with a lifetime income rider for $500,000, maybe that money will run out, when I get 85, 90 years old. Sure. But over here, you have another $500,000 that you're growing at the same time and you're not pulling from. So what's that going to do? Probably make up the difference. So the question is whether or not the program that we come up with works for you or not. And I'm no respecter. Look, it's got to fit your situation. Everybody's situation's different. You worry about, what if I live into my 90s? Let's have that conversation, okay? Because it's going to be specific to your concerns about life, to your needs, your wants, all of these things. And then we can have these conversations. So let me run a report on your brokerage account and identify certain factors and give you some data back. Everything we do here has nothing to do with emotion. It has to do with statistics, maybe some probabilities as well. We all know that with health has to do with, sure, some lifestyle, but sometimes it's also genetics too. So these are the discussions we have too. And when you retire, maybe you want to go take those trips now, because what if your health does fail? And if that's a concern, let's build that in. Let's build that into the plan and have these conversations and discussions. But I want to do whatever I can to reach you and to come in and let you know there's no pressure here. I love to have conversations with you, and I'm sure I can prove my worth to you.
One of the things about this, when I mention these topics here that people are concerned about, is inflation, healthcare, living into your 90s, and uncertain markets. These are all things that we can't control. They're variables of retirement. I think this is why we're so nervous, because we're going into this time where there's a whole bunch of outside forces that can affect our lifestyle. It can affect my wallet. Yeah, I live with that now, but every month I know how much money I'm bringing in. I know where my job is. I know what I spend. There's a little more certainty in it right now for me. Retirement is kind of cloudy out there. So, I mean, when I think about Navy SEALs, when they train and they're going to go in on a mission, they're going to figure out as many variables and as many things that can go wrong as they possibly can, and they're going to train for that and take all of that into consideration. I think that's kind of what we have to do in retirement too, is have a plan for all the variables.
Certainly. That's really important to do, to prepare for all the variables, because we want to know, hey, what are you facing? You talked about, maybe concerns. Maybe your parent had experienced dementia, and maybe you're worried about that. Maybe if it hits you, and yeah, let's just have these conversations, because again, we want you to retire the way you want to retire. Now, retirement for me is definitely not sitting on the couch and just watching The Price is Right, like we talked about earlier. Retirement for me is, I like doing what I'm doing. I probably wouldn't do it in as many hours as I'm doing, but the thing that I like about what I do is that my brain is operating at full capacity, and it helps me to operate, and I like to work with people based on their retirement plans. I don't like to have to do all the other touches. That's why we've been building the business, so other people can do certain touches for me, but I like the client relationship and coming up with solutions together. We do these things together, and we're a boutique operation. We like to work directly with you. So we want to build a relationship, build a rapport, and then be there for you like family. So that's what's important to us. So we want to know all about you. I'm going to ask you all kinds of questions, and we're going to get to know each other on a very personal level.
There's a lot of variables out there, and I think that's what's scary about retirement. And you may have in your mind what you want to do in retirement, but how's the market going to affect that? How's my health going to affect that? How's the premiums on Medicare? What's all that about? And there's just so much to learn and to know. How are you going to know unless we do the math on your retirement? Let's go. MoreToRetire.com is the website. At the bottom of the page, there's a place for you to put a little information in there. Mark will reach out to you, and we'll start the process of learning about you and having a meeting and talking about what you want to do in retirement and what your concerns are. MoreToRetire.com or 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984. Well, one of the variables out there right now, and they're talking about it a lot, is the interest rates. There's a lot of talk about that. And Jerome Powell, President Trump wants him to lower rates. Powell is saying, no, the data doesn't say that yet. And I may even have to raise rates if inflation goes up. So that's a part of the conversation. This is Mass Mutual's Kelly Kowalski on CNBC talking about interest rates and those of us who are getting ready to retire.
Higher interest rates for us mean higher earnings, higher reinvestment rates. One trend that we see with the higher interest rates is a lot of annuity sales, and we've just seen, really steady demand for annuities because people seek the relative certainty of return and safety.
I mentioned it earlier in the show that this year there has been a record number of annuities sold. And I know that just that word right there sometimes makes people go, I don't know about that. I've heard bad things or whatever. We're not afraid to talk about that. An annuity is a tool. It's nothing more than a tool for your retirement. If you want income in retirement, it's something to look at. And Mark, I think that sometimes we build up walls and say, nope, don't want to talk about that. But would you say, nope, don't want to talk about stocks? Nope, don't want to talk about bonds. Nope, don't want to talk about CDs. I don't think people do that, do they?
No, and as a matter of fact, let me clarify certain things here. So if we're doing market money for you, that's comes across on the fiduciary standard of care with regards to how we operate. So that's totally separate from commission-based products like annuities. So we want to understand that there's no conflict of interest. Okay. So number one, explaining that is an annuity is an outside tool, but a part of your overall portfolio. And it could be effective for you based on certain variables. Maybe you need a lifetime income rider, which can guarantee some type of income on that product for life, right? And we can answer those questions based on how those products work. Maybe you need a fixed index annuity because you just want conservative or preservation tactics for growth purposes, and you don't want to see the downs on the market. I get that. And maybe you want to do a multi-year guarantee annuity because we want to avoid the interest rate risk in the future. We want to lock in a 5 or a 10-year return at a certain rate of return that seems to be showing higher rates than CDs right now. But again, that's on average. And of course, all these conversations need to happen. Now, but if it's just on the brokerage side of the business, there are ways where we can break up correlation differently than just annuities. We can also use structured notes to break up correlation as well. And why do we want to break up correlation, Randy? Simply because if you break up correlation, it can reduce the ability for you to lose as much money, because if there's a correction in the market, then you correct fully the more correlation you have.
So
right?
That's like mom saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If anybody looks at you and say you should put all your money into an annuity, run the other direction.
Absolutely. I mean, if somebody came into your office and say, oh, I got $2 million, I want to be safe and all this and that. And I looked at you and I said, yeah, let's put $1.6 million into annuities. Run.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really. I'm not going to do that either. All right. You don't want to lock up all your money. You don't want it to be in all one place. You don't want to be all $2 million in the market either. I mean, I just think it's not intelligent when it comes to retirement planning. But if it's what you want to do, we can work around it. You know, I'll be upfront and honest with you and tell you what I think and what I see.
Well, we want preservation of our money. We want to make sure that we've worked all our lives and that money's not going to get evaporated by some market decline. That happened to us in 2008. We all experienced it. Down it went. And as the old joke goes, the 401k became a 201k. You don't want that in your retirement years. We need income. We need growth. We need tax planning. We need all these different things in our retirement years. And we want to make sure that as we do it, it's right for us. It's custom made for how we are, how we feel. And that's what you get when you sit down with Mark and the team. Give us a look on the website, moretoretire.com, moretoretire.com, or 984-300-1984, 984-300-1984. Let's have a conversation about your retirement today. We thank you so much for listening, and we hope you'll find us on our podcast, which is on iTunes and Spotify, and we hope you'll join us next week here on the Mark Osler Retirement Experience.
Insurance products are offered through the insurance business Mark Osler Retirement Experience. Mark Osler Retirement Experience is also an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through Impact Partnership Wealth LLC, a registered investment advisor. IPW does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by Mark Osler Retirement Experience are not subject to investment advisor requirements. Investing involves risks, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing carrier. This radio podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be considered as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. Mark Osler Retirement Experience is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during the show shall constitute legal or tax advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein are provided by third parties that have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Mark Osler Retirement Experience. Market Guard is a firm that provides investment signals as well as portfolio allocation recommendations for a wide variety of model portfolios. Market Guard does not offer advice or enter into fiduciary relationships. Please remember that converting an employer plan account to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. Increased taxable income from the Roth IRA conversion may have several consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.